In session, Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With liberty and justice for all.
That's right. That's right.
I'll have to share with you.
I can't.
Serious accidents.
Okay, we need to approve the agenda.
So moved to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additions? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Approve the minutes to the last meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Somebody, there we go. Moved and seconded. Any additions or corrections on that? Okay, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. How many people, do we have anybody for public comment this morning? Okay. Appointments. John?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
John.
Today I just have two routine contracts to bring before you. These are guardianship contracts, and generally we try to bring our guardianship contracts to the board on an annual basis. These and several others that you'll probably be seeing are related to one of our long-term guardians is starting to move out of doing that, and so we're transitioning some of those cases to other guardians. So today we have two of those before you. Let's see. I'm going to try to do this electronically today. Okay, the first of those contracts is with Kathy Stegemeyer, and as I mentioned, this is a routine guardianship contract. We have a number of folks that we provide guardianship services for, and as I mentioned, this is as a result of one of our long-term guardians starting to move out of that business and transitioning some of those folks to other folks. So the first one would be Kathy Stegemeyer, Catherine Stegemeyer.
Just again, for my own edification, what, how are the guardians chosen, or?
They come to us and, or we recruit them. In this case, I think that Ms. Stegemeyer came to us and said that she was interested in providing these services, and we go through a process of setting up that contract, background checks, and some of the requirements of the contract to make sure that she would be a suitable participant to do this. Sometimes we've had relationship with folks before, and or perhaps somebody is already doing guardianship for us and they take on an additional case. So there's a variety of different things.
Okay.
But there's a process for determining whether or not they're appropriate to provide those types of services.
Guardianship DD.
Developmental disabilities.
All right, thank you.
So that would mean that the individual that they're providing guardianship services for is an adult who has developmental disabilities, and so the scope of what the guardian does is related to the needs that the person has, making decisions around finances, potentially certain care decisions and things like that.
So I would move to approve What is her first name?
Catherine.
Catherine.
Catherine Stegemeyer as a guardian.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Commissioner Connor, did you have a question or? Oh, okay. The second one is very similar and just with a different individual, and that's Shama Meyer. So providing guardianship services for us, and again, kind of as a result of us making some changes as a person who's done a number of these for us is moving out of that business.
I'll make a motion to approve Shalma.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
All right. Any other questions?
These are independent contractors, they're not,
Correct.
okay, so much a month, type, based on their services?
Correct. All right. Well, you guys have a good day.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Feedlot officer. We are actually, no, we aren't early, are we? Okay.
All right, well, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I'm just here to seek approval for our 2017 annual report. As I'm sure you hear this every year, the PCA requires us to complete this report every year and then undergo an evaluation. So we did that back in February, I believe.
Could you pull that mic a little bit closer?
Yep. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want me to start over?
No, that's
Is that-
okay.
Okay. And so I'll just give you a quick overview of kind of what happened or what we did last year. So in 2017, there were 414 eligible feedlots in the county. We are required to inspect 7% of those, which was 29. And so they actually last year did 33, which is just about 8%. 24 of those were producers under 300 animal units. And then 8 were producers over that 300, with 1 in shoreland, which fell between 10 and 49 animal units. They issued 6 interim permits and 3 construction short forms. And then a couple other things that they did was co-hosted a producer workshop with Fillmore County and Winona County. And then they just continued to do a lot of continuing ed over the course of the year. And so there were performance credits earned, but I guess I'm not sure at this point how much that is. I don't know if you've been made aware of that. So we will be receiving money for that. Last year, our budget, we carried over just over $10,000 from 2016, and then we'll carry over about the same $10,068 now, got carried over into 2018. But do you guys have any questions?
Just curious, how do you decide which ones to review of the many you have?
Well, we do have a delegation agreement with the PCA where they kind of dictate different ones as far as like shoreland units, the producers over so many animal units amount, and then from there we kind of, well, it depends on who's doing construction work and stuff like that.
The counties work with the PCA. They have a lot of requirements, as Amelia said. If somebody's going to be building on their lot, that triggers an inspection. Beyond that, we do have some leniency in how we prioritize areas. This year, we're focusing on the Pine Creek watershed, and that was based on consultations with the folks over in soil and water and the water planning. I think there was some higher levels of nutrients in that watershed, so they thought, why don't we focus on feedlots that drain?
That ties in, I would guess, to the whole buffer thing, whether that's...
To a degree, the feedlots, typically the feedlots aren't located within that buffer area. So
Okay.
it might be further upslope,
Okay.
but still drain into that
Oh,
water.
so the nutrients probably from field, not the feedlot, but the border, whatever is bordering that water.
And when we're identifying, in this example, the Pine Creek, they may apply their manure elsewhere. We're looking at the physical location of the actual lot So they may have adjacent fields where they do
Right.
their application, but maybe they apply someplace else.
Just out of curiosity, what's the largest feedlot with largest amount of animals in the county, do you know?
I don't know offhand. Once we cross 1,000 animal units, the state takes over that permitting. There's very few of that size. We could compile that for you if you want us to come back.
No, just a curiosity question.
Why do we, the 10,000 carryover, is that just something we try to keep?
No. We will likely spend that money this year. A lot of that is in the accounting procedures that the state requires for the feedlot program. So in past years, when I've done that, if I get a 5-minute phone call, I don't know if that's always being logged into that budget. Now we have a more dedicated position for that, so I think that will reflect the way that we account for the spending of our feedlot dollars.
Keep it down just in case last minute stuff comes in that you don't really.
Well,
first-
most counties that have a dedicated position exceed, the cost of the position exceeds what the feedlot monies come from the state are. And again, it's just the, my view is that it's the ability to track that. And at some point when you're tracking 5 or 10 minute intervals, you're spending more time tracking than you're actually spending time working on the program. And so I would expect in prior years, there's been a lot of very brief interactions that have been related to feedlot program that I haven't gotten into our feedlot budget, and as a result, our number is smaller than what it probably should have been. But we do carry that over. At some point, we have to spend it, that we can't
Great.
perpetually carry it over.
Good.
Amelia, you've been with us for a while now. You feeling comfortable?
I think we're getting there. Just kind of starting to get busy now,
Yeah,
now that the weather's nice.
right.
I could feel that same question. Not even close. Still working on it. And I'm speaking for myself. We do need the board to sign off on our last year's.
There's one in the office.
If Fred, if you could
Okay,
stop.
so you need a motion to accept the report.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the feedlot report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
A couple other matters for the board this morning. On your agenda there, and provided in your packets, there was an agreement between the county and Soil and Water, formally outlining the roles and responsibilities for the buffer program. The Soil and Water Board is requesting some additional work be done on the language included in there. So I won't go any further into that today with the board unless you have specific questions related to the language that's in there currently.
I think so.
Anything major?
It stems from how the process or how the enforcement mechanism is put into effect, and it starts with the soil and water under statute, and we're just trying to hash out what both the county and the soil and water are comfortable doing in terms of informing the board on, or putting that into motion, I guess is what I should say. So I expect to bring that back in the coming month.
Now, this involves a relationship between Soil and Water and your office, right?
Correct.
And at this point, Soil and Water, what's their basic responsibility in this area?
The state statute requires that they do a certain number of verifications of buffers. And I think
Okay.
they have to, every 3 years, they have to have looked at all the areas that should have buffers. And then they are also charged with making a determination as to whether they're in compliance or not. If they're not in compliance, that's when the county, it kicks it over to the county begins to act. The enforcement is on the county side. The determination is on the soil and water side.
Now, the state reimburses Soil and Water for that work, or is there a block grant out there? I mean, that takes time.
Yes.
Time is money. Where does the money come from on that?
So they do get funding from the state for that. Whether
Okay.
it's the appropriate amount, I don't know. This agreement left it open so that the county could share some of its buffer funding with them for that purpose.
Okay.
And in return, we then get our file that's passed from Soil and Water to the county is in a specified format that makes it easier for us to move forward with something should we have to do that.
Yeah, okay. And then when they find something that isn't in compliance, at some point then they report it to you, or where's the responsibility on this? Who does their report that, hey, this farm is not in compliance?
That's the piece that we're kind of working through at this point. This, as drafted by the county, they would report it to the Environmental Service Office, and they would provide an informational update to the county board.
Okay,
That might be amended to be something else. I think a presentation would come to the board. The question is, who is going to be involved in giving that presentation? It may just be me, it may be both organizations.
Now, that's what I was getting at, because I'm on the SWC board as a representative of this group, and I don't remember a discussion about this at that board level. I could be wrong.
Okay.
I'll have to look back, but I don't remember a discussion. When would that discussion have taken place?
Would have been relatively recently, but I have talked with Dave Walter and the chair,
Yeah,
Mr. Feldmeyer, and they seem to have
okay.
shared concerns and indicated that their board was not satisfied with the language as proposed.
There was-
Yeah, okay,
I've had
because
quite
I
a-
should have been rather alert to that. I don't remember it. Okay, I will double check that.
And I think it's important that they are comfortable with
Yeah,
the way that it's written. So another round of edits is.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I've had quite a few discussions with Dave Walters this past week last couple weeks, because a state legislator wanted to put on a new law saying there would be a penalty of $500 per foot for a violation. Well, that didn't go over very good with the state, farmers, everybody else. That's a little extreme, so they dropped it. And that was mainly Bowser that was trying to get the extra. So that's been completely dropped. But Dave also told me, because we turned it over to the county, Bowser's, we do the stipulations what the fines will be. And we do have that written up in our planning and zoning book, because I looked it up to see
Right.
what it was.
If they went to make a change at this point,
Right,
we've already adopted an ordinance.
Yep.
It wouldn't apply to ours unless we went in and tinkered with our language.
right. Because I got calls from commissioners from Winona County, you might guess who, with major concerns and wanted me to call the governor and everything on it, but I started with Dave, and then they came out with it the next day.
I think
so.
she owns some land in Houston County.
She does.
You narrowed it down with the pronoun
She
first.
kind of
didn't
keeps
you?
track of those things.
Oh, you mean Marcia Bauer?
No, it's not Bauer.
Or Marcia, not Marcia Bauer. Jeez, that's our Bauer, Marcia Ward. Jeez, yeah.
She'll be happy to have been mentioned at our meeting.
Well, we got to keep track of this buffer law too, because it could affect us
Yeah,
adversely.
This may be unrelated to, but I got this email yesterday about other waters within the Crooked Creek Watershed District. You've seen that, or?
I have not, no.
That came from Soil and Water, I saw that.
Yeah, it just made me think, last year, I talked about some of these creek beds that are dry 99% of the time, and somewhere we discussed that not to include those because all it was going to do is expand. You know, I was concerned about empire building, I guess would be one way to say it.
My understanding is that last year the DNR went through the process of making a buffer map, and that based on the buffer map, that's how Soil and Water determines where the buffers are required and does an inspection, and that's how the county would ultimately receive a notice from Soil and Water that something needs to be enforced upon. But generally, those intermittent streams that aren't always flowing are not public waters, and there wouldn't be a buffer requirement on them. I know there are some exceptions to that, and it's all based on the DNR who makes that
Okay,
determination.
why don't I send this to you, and then you can just look at it, and if you think it warrants any discussion, let me know, please.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I saw
That
that
too
too.
comes from the
I wondered
DNR
what's
first
going on here.
Yeah.
to us, so.
Been a few changes to that already, right? I've got like 3 of them,
Yeah.
updates to it.
Again, I expect to come back with a agreement that both sides are comfortable with in the near future.
Sounds good.
If I can move on to the zoning in La Crescent Township, we have begun to accept applications from La Crescent Township residents, and we have begun to issue permits as well. We did not begin to accept them until we received a letter from the township attorney, and we received that on April 9th. And he simply outlines the process that they undertook and provides the minutes from the meeting where that vote occurred. Once the township is no longer administering the zoning, it defaults back to the county. There'll likely be some challenges as we transition here with any discrepancies in terms of the rules they had and the rules the county has. I'm also anticipating some challenges in terms of records, and that a lot of it's probably the systems that are in place, and we have one system and they have another system. They might not always contain the same information, so we'll have to work through those as they present themselves. So I'm providing this today as just a matter of information for the board, and we are also trying to be as accommodating as possible to the folks in the township, because for those folks who were looking to get a project permitted during that transition time, I suspect they found themselves a bit frustrated because the township wasn't accepting applications, nor was the county, for about a 2-week period.
And I would mention, relative to that, one in particular that Teresa and I both know about. Aaron was very helpful, and therefore the young man quit calling me, so I took that as a good sign. So we do all the other townships. This is a let, but none of the townships have the potential, or not even the potential, right now the amount of zoning business, I guess you could say. We just absorb this with our budget and our staff, and is there any way that we can get some contribution toward what we're taking on?
Well, actually, the part that is being annexed will fall under city permitting and zoning. not county.
Okay,
You
the
know, it's
racetrack.
just the
yeah.
rural areas, the racetrack, the 73 homes there.
That's a good
all
point.
city.
That's right.
And they do the permitting.
Actually, that was the impetus for this change to begin with. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes a difference, and we're
Thus far, and I don't have hard numbers, but just anecdotally, over the past 3 to 4 weeks, the calls from La Crescent Township are more frequent than other townships in the county. So we'll look at what that looks like over a longer period of time.
okay.
And you would, like as you said, you might expect that just because there's more population there.
Right. But with that in mind, I guess I would still ask: would it be unprecedented to say we would like to see some compensation for?
You mean from the township? I think yes, I think it would be. I mean, certainly in the county, it would be unprecedented. Maybe what you're getting at would be a reassessment of our fee structure across the board. I guess I don't know that it would be a good idea to have different fee structures for different townships.
Yeah, I would agree. So, okay, well, we'll follow and see where this goes. So, thanks.
Any other questions on the Crescent Township? Next, I wanted to ask the board about per diems for Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment site visits. We currently pay out per diems for hearings. We have paid out that same per diem for site visits as well. That has been done when a site visit is organized by the county or held as a public hearing, or not a public, held as an event open to the public. If members visit the sites on a voluntary basis, we haven't provided anything. I think there is some value in seeing the site, and a lot of members take it upon themselves to just drive out to the site and look at it. We would like to do more of the organized visits in the future, but I think it's fair that folks are compensated for their time to do that. Within the ordinance, we have or not within the ordinance, with our policies provide for a $45 site visit stipend for the Feedlot Advisory Committee. That's a body that only does site visits. So we're proposing to use that same amount for site visits that the Planning Commission or the Board of Adjustment might do, and that would be in addition to the stipend they get for their hearing. So a Planning Commission member gets $100 for a hearing or for an evening of hearings. So they come in on a Thursday night. If they did a site visit as part of that application, they would also get a $45 stipend for each site that they visit.
I guess is the only, well, now Fred sits on it, but is one of the only commissioners up here to be on the Planning Commission for several years. I'll speak from my own experience. I'm torn because the pay to be on that is the highest of any committee in the county at $100. Whenever I was on there and we had a site visit, it was on a voluntary basis where we had a controversy and somebody said, well, maybe we should see the site. Okay, go see the site. I guess there's a part of me that I feel that that's part of what that $100 is for, is being on that committee, and you might have to go out there. In the past, there hasn't been all that many site visits. A lot of it isn't, in my opinion, necessary as far as a lot of the work can be done without. There's been some bigger issues and bigger feedlots that have come up and things like that where it's like, well, maybe we should see it. My only concern is a lot of the efforts to go to a site visit going to be driven monetarily then that, well, let's go see the site visit, I'll make $100 or I'll make $45 or whatever. I guess there's a part of me that if it's going to be an open public event that we've had before, that obviously warrants maybe something. I personally don't feel that it's a necessary thing to have happen. I know, like on the, other committees in the past haven't gotten it. I'm just concerned if we open up a can of worms where, for instance, like EDA, if you're going to go to look at a business, are they going to say, well, we should get a per diem to go and look at that business since we sit on the EDA, or so, it's that same scenario of you're visiting, but that's part of being on that committee. So I understand, you're driving places and taking time out of your day to go to the site and see it. I guess I'm just torn. Are we going to open a can of worms to other committees that say, well, we go places and look at things, we should get compensated, and the fact that you're already getting paid $100 per meeting, which is way higher than any other committee. I guess if we're going to start giving out per diems for other events, then do we lower that $100 down and then say you get paid less, but then you'll get per diems and can go to site visits? I mean, budgeting wise, that's going to be tough to budget if we know how many meetings if you had one a month, but if all of a sudden you have 3 or 4 different things come up in that month and you say, well, we should go to a site visit for all times 7 members, is it going to be hard to budget? I'm just curious if it opens up more questions than answers.
Has it come from the commission? A request from the commission to do this?
No, this is being driven by my office.
Okay.
For starters, how did we get to the 100 to start with? Is there more time involved? I mean, I know some of these have went very late and long.
I'll speak to that just a little bit. I sort of, having been on planning commission now for about 4 months, I can speak to that a little bit because some of those planning commission meetings, first of all, are very high stress situations. They really are. If you haven't been at a planning commission meeting, you should go sometime when you know that it's going to be a contentious meeting. You really should. Those meetings sometimes, not all the time, but so I've been at a planning commission meeting that lasted past midnight. I think it was 1:45 before I left the room. And it was a very intense meeting from 7 o'clock until 12:30. How do you compensate people for that? I don't know. Not easy. My question, and that's probably where the $100 comes from, is some of those situations are really very difficult, and is that compensation part of the reason that we have people willing to serve on that commission? I don't know the answer to that. Would we have more trouble getting people on that commission if we paid $40 or $65? I don't know that, but just saying. Now, my question to Aaron on this site visit question is, are you talking about a formal planning commission visit as a group to those sites when you talk about compensation?
Well, that and if the county organizes, if we organize smaller groups, subparts of the planning commission to go out, it's also the county then, we're not requiring you to go, but we are suggesting you go. We would then compensate. If you go without a suggestion from the county on your own accord, we would not compensate.
I would be reluctant to see the planning commission go to a basis of having a formal planning commission meeting on site. Very difficult to communicate in those situations. You simply can't hear each other. And anybody that has something to say, are you going to be able to understand them? Are you going to be able to hear them? And if something is highly contentious, you have then a whole lot more difficulty controlling the situation.
Mr. Chairman, I was
I'm of the understanding from what I got from your department that this would also be for the Board of Adjustment if they went on site visits.
Right, it
Just
would
for
be for planning
clarification.
commission and board
Okay,
adjustment.
just
Okay,
wanted to make
I-
sure I understood it correctly.
Okay, yeah, I had not remembered that, thank you. That's, I would rather have it an informal, county can organize it, but I'd much rather have informal, 2 people, 3 people, whatever is, and rotated. I understand it probably takes more staff time, but it does, not necessarily.
It depends if staff
Whatever,
is always
but
there. Sometimes the applicants.
That's my 2 cents worth.
I guess, while you're still pondering, I will say though that, Fred, you bring up a question that maybe needs to be looked at too, that it hasn't been until the last maybe 5 years that the planning commission meetings have gone very late and have been overly stressful or contentious. When I first got on the board, our meetings ran smooth. You'd have some issues that maybe went a little bit longer than others, but nothing until midnight, 1 in the morning. I guess that brings up the question too, that should we be looking at trying to get our points a little bit more readily available and questions answered in a timely manner? What I mean by that is I've sat in on a couple of the meetings that went late till 11 o'clock at night or whatever, and it seemed like you kind of sit there and take questions and ponder about it until people run out of things to ask about it. I think a lot of it has to do with meetings running late is up to the people running the meetings to make sure that stays on task and things get done. The $100 I know has been here, and I can only speak for my time being here, has been here ever since I've gotten on, which was 8 years ago. And at that moment, I don't know why it was ever set at 100. I'm sure that a lot of it has to do with the responsibilities, especially the Board of Adjustment, since they are kind of quasi-judicial. The Planning Commission doesn't necessarily have a final say, so they wouldn't have the responsibility that the Board of Adjustment does. But I get there's time put into it, and I know in the past it's been brought up that, well, we have to know the county ordinances and you have to know all of these other things. So I don't know if that played a part in it or why, but I do think that we need to look at, as far as meeting lengths and stuff, I just don't want to see people getting burnt out that, even for $100, if every meeting's 4 or 5 hours long, I'd question people wanting to do it even for $100. So we need to look into that. I have no problems if it's a county orchestrated, say your office, Aaron says, hey, I really think this is important. We've had a couple of those that I've been on, especially feedlots with really odd drainage issues and things that you say, we need to go and look. I don't have an issue if it's something like that, and it's kind of a non-mandatory, mandatory type. We strongly encourage you to go. I just don't want to see people being able to say, oh, well, I had a call from this person, so I went, so I'm going to collect 45, and well, I went over there too, and so I collect. If it's county,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's
Yep.
not. So it's
Yep.
not just.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how I would look at it, is if Aaron deems it
Necessary.
necessary, I would be fine with it.
It's a cost that should be covered by the application fee. And that's always a trick in determining
Sure.
what that application fee should be, because if we have 3 hearings in one evening, then all expenses are covered and some. If we have just 1 hearing in one evening, then we're probably doing that at a loss. So the trick is trying to anticipate what's the reasonable amount of hearings we should be budgeting for,
Sure.
and set the rates accordingly. I guess I would default to a position that as often as we can see the site, if people have the time and are willing to do it, at worst, it's unproductive time. At best, you're making a more informed decision, and I would err on the side of caution in that. So I think we would slowly move toward a system where we're looking at almost every one, and unfortunately our meeting length is arcing toward longer meetings, not shorter. A lot of that is really dotting i's and crossing t's very thoroughly, based on guidance from the county attorney and other legal folks who have expertise in that area.
Well, and maybe, and that's something too where, do we need to look at 2 meetings a month instead of 1 to try, as far as, because I just worry that starting at 7 and getting done at midnight or 1 is not fun.
Yeah, I think we will be there shortly, because I think we ought not be operating after, say, 10 p.m.
Yeah, exactly. And it starts getting not productive and people lose interest. The other last thing too is I have no problems if it's coming out of the fees, if that makes sense.
Right, so if I
permitting
look at,
fees and
for
stuff.
instance,
Yep.
previous years, our fees are
Yep.
covering our hearing costs,
Yep.
as long as we're not including my costs, Amelia's costs, things like that. But if we're looking at just per diems and mailings and legals and things of that nature, we're covering that. But it fluctuates based on how many we get in a given month. The more we have,
Yeah,
the more they're covered. But that also puts us there later into the evening.
Well, and we've had, like I said, and I'll get off the soapbox, but I know of quite a few times where we've gone to site visits and it's been helpful to see it. Because obviously, on a computer, you can't really tell the 3-dimensional imaging. Even topographical maps doesn't really quite give you the perspective. So I do think it's important to go, as long as the fees are covered, or the money's covered from the fees,
So-
and it's set up by the county. As long as there's some structure to it, I have no problems.
And I should add, Justin, you were saying the Board of Adjustment being quasi-judicial.
Yeah.
Its per diem is 85, and the Planning Commission is 100. That I don't understand at all.
Well, that's right, and I'm glad you brought that up because I think I brought that up. It might have been 4 years ago now or something like that. I said something's a little screwy here that I would think it would be reversed. You know what I mean? If with the responsibility aspect of it, and you're only paying at that time 3 people $100 instead of 7 $100. It was. You're right, Aaron. I don't know why it's the way that it is.
What I would like to do is make them both the 100.
Sure.
And make them both 45 for a county-initiated site visit, I guess would be the way we
I
call
think
it.
that sounds good.
Okay, Aaron, when are the fees calculated? I mean, if it's going to come out of the fee money, you almost have to assess the fee after you've done the visits? Is that?
Well, no, I think we try to project it a year in advance. And again, we can't do that perfectly because we don't know how many applications we're going to get. So your planning commission member is going to get $100 for coming in on a Thursday night, and he or she may hear one application, or he or she may hear 4 applications. So if we're hearing 4 applications, the county's collecting $2,000 in CUP application fees, and we're paying out the stipends for the hearing and the site visits and the postage and the mailing and the advertisements out of that money. If they're coming in and we only have 1 application that month, however, we're still paying out the $100 to each person for coming in, but we only have $500 in fees to work for that month.
Do you know, Aaron, what the numbers are as far as last year total monies given out to Board of Adjustment and Planning Commission and total fees collected? Where we're at?
Yeah, we have for last year, for looking at CUPs, we brought in 8,500 in fees, and hearing costs not associated with staff time, we're at 4,600 and some change.
Okay, so it would be very doable and not necessarily.
Right, and I feel like the delta between those two is going to be shrinking, especially if you move to a second night, if we don't want to go late into the evening, and we are saying our hearings now are taking, an hour and a half when they used to take 35 minutes. It means there's only a certain number we could have in one evening. So if we move to a second evening, that delta will shrink.
Well, the other thing would be if you move to a second night, do you reduce the cost per meeting since you're going to have more meetings? Instead of 100 per meeting, well, okay, it's $75 per meeting because you have 2. You're still $150 a month to cover the same. You'd cover the same over 2 meetings as you would 1 meeting. So you're doing the exact same amount of work. You're just splitting it between 2 days. So should you be getting double the money for the same amount of work? I think that's going to have to be looked at. But yeah, and I guess I don't have any
This
other
isn't getting
issues.
complicated, is it, Aaron?
Well, I don't think anyone's doing these boards for the big paychecks they're getting. But I do think it's probably good practice for the county to have at least what's an appearance of something toward a fair compensation for the time, because as Fred said, that these aren't often enjoyable for the folks involved. They're making
yeah.
hard decisions and they're high stress environments. So I don't think people are doing it for the money, but it's nice to be able to offset some of maybe the trade-off that they're taking a day off from work, or they're taking an afternoon off from work. At least they're getting something back in exchange for their desire to.
Yeah.
I would make a motion to move the per diem for the Board of Adjustment to $100, and also have any approval of per diems for site visits at the discretion of Aaron Locker. And
Want to separate?
I would suggest you put it with the title in case I win the Powerball. You don't want to have.
Planning and zoning
Aaron, you just moved to
director,
California.
whatever.
Can they collect your per diem?
You mean at $45 at his discretion? Or
Yes.
any, okay.
yeah, zoning
Planning and zoning director.
director, yes.
Yeah, not
Who-
name
yeah.
specific.
I know who he is, though.
Yeah.
Tell you what, can we do this? Can we, not, I know, discussion-wise, but to clarify the motion, can we separate this into two motions? One to offset the Board of Adjustment from 85 to 100, and then come back on a per diem one and separate the two? Just to make it clear.
I have no objections. I would.
No. Okay, then, proper thing, I suppose, would be to withdraw the previous motion and then just make a new motion.
I'll withdraw the motion and then move to change the per diem for the Board of Adjustment from 85 to 100.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Now, you have another motion to make.
Yes, I would move to allow zoning administrator Locker the discretion to pay $45 for site visits when deemed by him to be necessary.
I'll second it.
And I'm assuming for both Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment. To clarify, I don't know if you said that, so just to clarify.
I'm just kidding you. Yes.
Okay,
That would be true.
we've got a motion and a second there. Now, is there discussion on that?
I think we kind of covered it.
I think so. The only thing was we might have not made it clear that it's the zoning administration office, not Aaron Locker.
It should run beyond me.
I think.
Zoning Administrator, yeah,
Zoning, yeah.
or Director. Yeah.
Zoning director.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carried. I would just add one thing for the benefit of the press, if nobody else. The Planning Commission, and I don't know for sure, but I assume also the Board of Adjustment, each one of those applications that we get as Planning Commission members requires a stack of paper about that thick, at least an inch thick, for each application, basically. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done outside of the meeting. It's not just the meeting. It's a fair amount of reading and questioning and understanding before the meeting starts.
Yeah, Craig's been there the whole time, yeah.
Okay.
Lastly, and very briefly, I wanted to touch on the authority of the zoning office to enforce the zoning ordinance, and this is in regards, I guess, to the action that the office took at the Schitt's Quarry. So that authority is found in the zoning ordinance. Duties and powers of the zoning administrators, subdivision 1, administration and enforcement. The zoning administrator shall enforce and administer this ordinance. So therein lies the ability to take action based on the rules found in the ordinance. And I won't get too far into the weeds really at all, but in terms of a non-conforming use, a determination is necessary as to whether something qualifies for that. And that's found in also in the ordinance in the non-conforming uses section. Establishment of non-conforming uses within districts established by this ordinance or amendments that may later be adopted. There may be existing lot structures and uses of land, water structures, which were lawful before August 30th, 1967. That's when we adopted zoning, but which would be prohibited, regulated, or restricted under the terms of this ordinance for future amendment. Is the intent of this ordinance to permit these non-conforming uses or structures to continue until they are removed, but not to encourage their survival? And there's a lot more detail to the non-conforming language there, but the gist of making a determination as to whether something qualifies or not as that is found in that section. And then the authority to act on it is found in the powers of the zoning administrator section.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
No, I'd just like to say, Gary Miners came in last week, and, you know, why can one person have the authority? And so that's kind of what Aaron is speaking to, is that that is his authority, and it can go through an appeals process that can, if he doesn't like that decision that Aaron has to make according to our policies. But so that's basically, I asked Aaron to come in and just clarify what Gary Miners was asking. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Fred, could you stop by and sign our feedlot document after the meeting?
I'll try to remember. Okay. I'll be back at 3:30 this afternoon for another meeting. If I want to call me or something, if I forget on the way out, I'll be back. Okay, Finance Director.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
You received your basically end of the first quarter of 2018 financial information, lots of page packets. We do that on a quarterly basis. It is really a recommendation that the board be apprised of what happens within each of the departments for our internal control. So that's why you receive it. And just to kind of let you see how the summary, you know, basically shows that we're where we should be at this point. Within the departments, there are probably numbers where we've paid 100% out of their budget already, and that's because it's billed in the first part of the year. You know, so that you can see how it balances out between all of the different line items that we have. There aren't any that really, I think at this point, would need adjusting unless someone does come up with an additional expenditure that they'd need to make during the year or later on in the year. Say there's a new board that they want to become a member of, or a new registration fee for a class that would really be beneficial. You know, in that case, we'd make an adjustment to that line item, but there isn't anything right now that looks like it needs to be adjusted. We discussed this at the Finance Committee meeting this morning, and there are a couple items that will affect the budget, and the first being the $47,000 payment that's included in today's claims run for the Money Creek School demolition. And I'm not sure if that includes the asbestos abatement. We couldn't quite remember if there'd be another bill coming for that. It's my understanding that this amount will be put on the tax bills. We've entered no?
No.
It's just a judgment.
It's a judgment.
That we'll try to collect.
It's recorded in the recorder's office as a
Okay.
judgment.
Not to say that we're necessarily going to get that money.
Right.
Really. You know, so that's something that could affect our budget for the, or well, it will affect the budget for the year and future years if we don't get it back. Then there's another item in the abatements that you'll be approving today. There was a clerical error where there was a tax bill sent out for $60-some thousand, which it should have only been $6,100. The county portion of that is approximately $20,000 to $22,000. So that is money that we certified in our levy to collect, and we won't be receiving that. So
So the taxpayer noticed that, huh?
they did. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe we should have just written on there, commissioners, I don't know, something.
It was a company that has a good professional bookkeeper that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. And there are more abatements that are going to be addressed, but they're smaller ones. We've never had one to this extent, and
Things
as-
happen, yeah.
It does.
Glad it was caught.
Yes. Just hopefully as the assessor's office gets more, more seasoned employees and not in such a crush that we don't have these things happen. I think that'll be the
I was
case.
kind of wondering when you punch it in, and it was a data entry error, that there was if something jumps more than 10% from last time, and maybe this is brand new, but maybe if I remember right, it might have been a brand new, hadn't been taxed before.
No,
That it might not have a trigger.
It had been, and our tax system doesn't have that kind of a trigger. It's more you really have to rely on lists and comparing this total to that, and really when you're looking at billions of dollars of value, even a $1 million difference, which was the case here, might not even show up as a flag, depending on what you're comparing.
Unless it's compared to what it was the year before, and it went up $1 million.
Right.
And
One
not
parcel,
as
of
the
course, you
whole,
can.
But as the individual.
Yeah, as a whole, it's really
Right.
hard to detect those things, so just one of those things. I didn't know if there was anything else that you may have noticed in the report that you wanted to have checked on, or?
No, just wanted you to say that everything's good.
It's looking good,
Yeah, got a couple of things out there, but
Yeah, and then we talked too about the highway department. They've received their 50% of their annual maintenance. They've received their, the other money, and I can't even remember what that is right now. It's just not popping in here. In a couple hours it'll be there. But they've also received their advance on projects. They're very good about getting their paperwork in and getting that money in before the project even starts, so that we have the money in the bank and we're collecting some interest on it. So Human Services is, pretty much even, because while we're not getting money for our 2018 expenditures, we are getting the money that they reimburse after 2017, so we still have monthly revenue coming in there. It's just maybe not for the applicable period. It's the general revenue fund that really relies more on the tax revenue that is showing that we're, we went from $5 million down to 3.5, or, close to that for the first 3 months, and that's typical.
yeah,
Mhm.
all's good.
Anything else? Okay.
Do we need to make a motion to accept the quarterly report?
No,
Okay.
unless you'd like to.
Can do anything we want,
They
right?
don't- the auditors have never looked to see if you actually accepted it. I do provide them with documentation. The report was sent out to you, and they look in the minutes to see that it was actually discussed.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Rebecca?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Rebecca Paulson. I'm the 4-H Program Coordinator for Houston County. Thank you for giving me a few minutes this morning. The reason I am here is I am wondering if you guys would be willing to help me with a little project, an event actually. So one thing that we like to do in 4-H is we're always looking at ways to help build leadership skills in our youth. And one way that we like to do that is in the area of government. And on a national scale, we have an event, it's called the National 4-H Conference, where youth go out to D.C. and they meet with legislators out there from Minnesota, and they do a bunch of breakout sessions where they choose a topic, they work on those different topics, and then they can present their findings, their ideas to the local legislators. And they have the opportunity to go in and meet and visit with Congress and just get a real feel for government on a national scale. And I would like to do something like that on a county scale. And so I was wondering if we could work out something where I could have a group of youth work on a couple of different issues that are hot topics in our county and then bring them back to you guys. And I'm looking at sometime in July, so not, next week or anything, but providing our youth with just an opportunity here on a county scale, on learning about local government, visiting the courthouse, even meeting with one of you guys, or if one of you guys wanted to be a speaker and do some kind of training or teach out something like that with this group. I'm looking for ideas, but also looking just to see if this would be something you guys would allow me to do. So.
I personally think it would be a real good idea. My grandson and freshman in Minneapolis or St. Paul recently went to a United Nations weekend thing and just came back very happy he went.
Yeah, it's a good experience.
So those kind of experiences, I think, because if you want them to be involved citizens as adults, it's a good training session for them. So
absolutely.
I'm going to just, now that I mentioned this, grandson, I'm going to just give you a little story. My wife was in a accident this weekend, and the airbags deployed, so she was talking to Oliver, and so I took the phone and I said, Oliver, can you differentiate between an airbag and a windbag? He said, yep. He said, you'd be the latter. So he's out of the will.
Sure,
Anyway, so, but you would start this when then, Rebecca?
It
You
would
said
be
July?
Yeah,
You would
sometime
do it
probably
all-
mid-July, something like
Okay.
that. And I would guess it would probably be a 2-day or 3-day kind of event where, the youth work on, well, I haven't put it all together yet, but, having opportunities for the youth to work on leadership skills and learn about what it's like to be a leader. Also focusing on the citizenship aspect of it and what it's like to be a leader in your community. And just, some different breakout sessions. But then to give them a choice of a couple different topics that you guys can tell me what you think would be the best topics for them to work on. They break out, work on what they think are, good solutions, and then bring those solutions to you. You wouldn't necessarily have to take their advice or not, but it would be a good opportunity for them to share out and just have that experience of being a citizen on a local scale and making a difference. So.
Would you want this done, like if they're bringing us their information and their thoughts in a formal setting, like at a board meeting?
Yeah, I think that would be great if you guys were open to it.
Do you have any idea numbers at this
I don't
point?
yet.
See, who'd be interested is what you need to determine first.
Yep,
Is it?
yep.
Okay. I didn't hear that.
1,800.
That would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Well, you're looking for our involvement. You're not looking for any budget?
No.
No,
No.
okay.
I mean, not unless you want to give me some.
I wasn't.
Now that you
We can
mention it.
talk.
Okay.
No, I basically just wanted to get your idea and find out.
Personally, I think it's a great thing.
I do.
Yeah.
The earlier you can get them involved and at least let them know that it's not a scary thing and that this is what happens. It's
Yeah.
great.
Well, and even you can see some of the movements even out nationally, getting younger people involved in things that, you know.
Yeah, then
Okay.
at the dinner table, when their parents are grumbling about the county, they can straighten them out.
Yeah, I didn't see you at the meeting, they can say that.
So what would be some topics that you guys would suggest for these?
I
youth to
think
work
some of the ongoing ones, I think one of them, you know, which would maybe be close to their heart too, is with the highway department building. Obviously, with the fair and stuff, I think would be probably number one.
You're right.
You know, because that.
How about frac sand?
That would be, it's
Yeah, I mean,
it's
well,
certainly
kinda-
timely.
It's yeah, it's not. I don't know that's a hot thing right now, but it's obviously been a hot thing.
Yeah.
Or just quarries in general,
Yeah.
or, you know, zoning in general.
Okay. Any others? I mean, it would be great if I had 4 or 5, and then
There
work
was
from
something
there.
else too that was just before you
County
said it.
administrator?
Well, if we come up
Yeah.
with things,
You
we
know,
can get
Even
in
if
touch
it
with you.
is-
I
Even
mean,
if it ends up
Yep.
past tense, they
Yeah.
saw that we worked on it,
That's
they know
true.
it was work done.
That's true.
Well, another one that, I don't know, Tess isn't here, but I thought we were waiting for the next movement is the old jail.
Oh, that's the one. I was
Yeah.
thinking of, yeah.
Good one.
That really would be a good one.
Okay. Okay. Well, this is a great start. Yeah, I can just. Can I send you guys all an email, or does that
Sure.
mean you guys are all in a vote?
That's
Okay.
fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Well, and the other
Fantastic.
thing is you could send out emails, and if we think of something in the meantime,
Yeah,
I mean, we
Let
could
you
just
know.
shoot them out there, and you could pick. If all of a sudden you get 15, just say, well, let's take these 5.
Yeah.
Or whatever. I mean,
Yep. Fantastic. All right. Is there a week in July that would be better than another? I mean, obviously, 4th of July.
Well, we don't
falls in
have a
there, but-
meeting on the second week in July, so that I would say would be
Okay.
out. The evening meeting is the 3rd week, so
And I
I
don't
don't know
know
that.
how this works with you guys. I suppose school's not in session, so.
Correct.
Unless that evening meeting would be better, because then
Right.
you'd have parents around to drive kids versus Tuesday morning at 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, why don't you?
Yeah,
It's a good
the
idea.
You know,
evening
and
meeting would
it's-
actually, from a practical
Sherry's got a
standpoint, work
thought?
better.
Well, I just think
What's
the
that?
second Tuesday would be good, because otherwise it's gonna cut into our regular business. If we had a special meeting just for this, rather than cutting into our normal business. I mean, this is
Oh.
gonna take quite some time.
Well, my only
Probably
concern
won't
is
be.
getting kids here that don't have driver's license.
And
On a
some of
Tuesday at
them,
9.
yeah, some of them will, because I'm going to shoot more towards the older kids.
Oh, okay.
So like the 9th through 12th graders.
Okay, so it's not gonna be necessarily like 7th and 8th and 6th graders.
There might be some 7th and 8th graders, but I'm going to definitely
Okay.
go towards those older kids.
Well, why don't you figure out how much response you're gonna get
Okay.
and who
Okay.
possibly, and then get back to us with that information, then we can
Yeah,
work
we have
with
plenty of
that.
Okay.
time before July.
There's
Yeah.
lots of time.
Yeah,
Okay.
because if we have to have a special meeting on that Tuesday, we can. If it's something where another day works, we can.
And even if, and if it is second Tuesdays, what, the second Tuesday? Well, that couldn't be the second Tuesday, the
Second week.
9th then.
July 10th be the second Tuesday.
Okay. I'll put a question mark by it, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, this next thing involves an error of omission on my part. When I met with the Fair Board, why the Fair Board people said, we need time on a county board agenda, and we agreed on this meeting, and I wrote it down, and I did not look at that note again when I was near a telephone, and so I did not make the request to the auditor to have the Fair Board people on this meeting. And then it just completely slipped my mind when I saw them at the beginning of the meeting, and I should have added it to the agenda at that point, and I didn't do it. So it's a double omission on my part. Could we hear the Fair Board people at this point?
I think so,
I'm
yes.
fine with it.
Okay. Thank you.
You don't have to turn in your resignation yet.
Nope. You only got 2 strikes.
If I do it again, I'm dead, right?
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Everybody knows me by now. Emily Johnson with the Secretary of Fair Board. We've got Eldon Pullman here as well. He's president currently. First off, I want to thank you guys for approving and signing off on the lease that we worked so hard to get to where we're at. And that kind of leads us into this. As part of the lease, any ground or structural stuff on the fairgrounds, we come to you guys and inform you. We are currently in the process of putting out sealed bids, so it'll be in all the papers in Houston County. We want to put up a 60 by 100, just kind of a shelter building. It would replace our entertainment tent that sits right behind the grandstand. As some of you may know, a couple of years ago the storm did take it down. Every year the cost of the tents goes up, so we're looking in the long run of takes money to make money kind of thing. We spend it now, save it in the long run. So we are looking, basically it's the post, the roof, and the wall against Main Street would be closed in.
So just one side's enclosed?
Yep.
I see.
At this point. It may, down the road, as funding becomes available, close in part of the others, but at this point, it would be open.
What, you're thinking of putting it where the tent by the grandstands is currently?
Yep.
Now, out of curiosity, how much room does that give you in between the other buildings? 'Cause 60 wide is pretty big.
It's all within the fenced-in area that's out there now. It's basically, we've
So
got
to just
that.
take its place? then?
Yep, it would,
Okay.
we would not rent the tent. So
I
we're
see.
looking for a more permanent structure. Our tent each year is, I don't even remember offhand, $3,000 a year. I mean, in a matter of a few years, you can have this structure paid for.
And are you thinking, like gravel base, grass, concrete?
Nope, we've currently got a concrete pad there.
Oh, okay.
So, for half of it, which we used to put up, like, because we have bands and everything else in the tent. So, we put in concrete a few years ago with the help of township money as a grounds improvement. That way we don't have to put up a portable dance floor. We have our senior citizens events in there. It's just easier for everything. So we do have it fenced in, so that's all our fenced in area for alcohol sales and whatnot. There is it 60 by...
60 by 50.
Is the concrete slab right now. And then it would just go towards our beer tent. So where the tent sits right now would be the building.
Are you going to concrete the other half or do anything with that? Or?
Somewhere down the line.
Okay, but not necessarily right now.
Right now, we'll put footings the same height as the concrete slab and set the poles on top of them.
Gotcha.
And you can just cement them in.
And then you put the poles on top, I'm assuming, on top of the other
Right.
concrete
Correct.
that's there, so then it's, if you
Right.
needed to tie it in, it's already done.
Yep.
Right. And we had to deal with issues such as not just the pole shed because of the echoing of the tin and that kind of thing. So,
So that'll be coming out in papers for the sealed bids, and we're hoping to move forward here probably by mid-May to be going forward on selecting who gets the bid and going forward and have it up before fair yet.
Sounds like a good
Now,
plan.
how does that, I know one of the biggest priorities out there was the other building for the sheet. Now, how does that take away the focus of that building
It's
if you
not,
add monies to that
it's
one?
not touching that focus whatsoever. That building, we are still doing fundraising stuff. We have a fundraising committee in place right now, coming up with some ideas going forward. That building is what we're considering like a grounds improvement project. Each year we go to our townships in Houston County, and we have actually, in the past few years, we have had every township helping us in some way. So that is the project we designate for grounds improvement this year. So we will take the township money to put that up, and then we will have to offset the difference on it. The Department of Ag has also got a small grant, like $1,500 out there, that is for the arts. Anyhow that enhances the arts. Well, we do have our talent contest, and we have some of the different performing artists are considered under arts. So that $1,500 is also allocated for this building.
So now let me ask the question that I'm sure people are going to ask. Why not take the money you're going to use for this new proposed building and apply it to the other building and get that one done sooner?
The building funds, anybody that is donated to that,
Mm-hmm.
that is strictly for that. We are not going to take those funding for anything else on the fairgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
This is just, I mean, we could keep paying each year out of the pocket, out of Fair Board pocket to put up a tent.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a lot more beneficial in the long run to bite the bullet now and the fair put up this building and still stay focused on our building project.
I'm just playing the devil's advocate because I see both sides of this thing. But playing the devil's advocate, I can see people saying, well, right, but if you're paying out a few $1,000s a year for a tent, or it's going to be, you know, however much for the other building, but yet we need the, you know, a sheep and goat and swine barn more. Do we just take that money, get that building done so it's done and completed, then worry about the other building? You know, I can hear people saying, well, geez, now you're taking, I thought you wanted to do this building, now you're taking this building, and
You'd still have to pay for
But
the tent.
Well, I get that,
we're getting into a situation here where we're questioning the management of the Fair Board, and I really don't think we ought to be going
well,
there.
I will say this.
Every step that we take as a fair board, there is no pleasing anyone along the way. I mean, no matter if we bring in the tractor puller, we bring in demo derby, somebody's going to be bummed out, and somebody's going to voice their opinion to us. And as long as I've been on the board, I have taken probably more criticism than I have compliments. Yes, compliments are out there, but it is a lot easier for people to criticize you.
Well, I will say this. As I said before, I'm playing the devil's advocate because this question will get brought up. Am I questioning them?
Justin,
Well,
this is a question.
Fred, it is.
This is a question for them to answer, not for us.
Is it the county property? Is it a building going on the county property? Yes. I am saying, I'm just questioning that this answer is going to be brought up. I'm sure I'm going to get asked the exact same answer, and I need to know, what is the management? What is the purpose? Yes, we feel we need this more. We feel that this money would be offset by not renting the tents. Therefore, it's better used this way. I need to know, because when I get questioned that,
But it's not
How do I do it?
Refer it to the Fair Board.
Direct them to the Fair
You don't
Board.
have to answer it.
well, I get that, but is it not? Is it
Because
not
we
the
don't-
county?
we
Is it not
don't-
the county land? Is it not the county land?
It is county
It is a
land.
county land. Okay, so my question is, I'm just asking the question so that I am informed, just as everybody else wishes that they are informed. I would like to be informed. Why is it that we have dealt with the issue of the hog and swine barn for a long time, a lot of it which drove the lease agreement? Now it's, well, we want another building too. I just need to know why are we all of a sudden, you know, why is the Fair Board going after another building? I just want that clarified and my questions answered.
Right, and I think she did that.
Well, I know, and that's why I asked that, because if I didn't ask that, I don't think I would have had that clarified.
When we started with this whole building project itself,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and we're at the point we want to do a 3-phase on it.
Mhm.
Obviously, our board has voted, there is no demolition, there is no starting, there is no nothing on that building project until all of the funds for that project is raised,
Mhm.
which we are working on.
Mhm.
But at the same time, that building project it's part of the fair, but it is still separate project. We still need to maintain the fair and the buildings we have now. So what happens if, I mean, we could get the same question if a roof gets blown off in a hailstorm or something.
Mhm.
We're still gonna maintain that building that we need to provide not only safety for our fair goers, but also just to keep the value of the buildings where they need to be. I mean, is somebody going to complain because we replaced this building that got torn down before we put up the hog building? Because we do not have all of our funds for it yet.
Mhm.
So we're looking at, like I said, 2 years ago, we had a band playing in there. We had people in it, and that tent went down due to weather. I don't want that happening again. I mean, very, very lucky nobody got hurt in it. But as a board, we would like to avoid that. And it's kind of one of those business choices that, yes, you spend money to make money. Essentially, once this building is up, we have it paid off, we will not have a $3,000 expense each year to rent a tent. That $3,000 can go elsewhere.
See, that's the answer that I'm looking for.
Well, there's more to it than that even, Justin. We're hitting two different directions.
Yep.
On Thursday night is our concert. We had businesses that stepped up and are donating money for the concert, and it is a fundraiser for us to try and make money off of having that concert. It isn't just a donation of the concert, it's a fundraiser.
Perfect. Now, to set the record straight, this is why I asked the question, because it can get aired out, and with the press being here, now everybody knows the reason why they want to do this with the building. So the question, Fred, had to be asked. So thank you very much.
Yes.
And like I said before, I don't have a dog in this fight. I see it as a valuable thing because of the history with the tents, and I'm all for trying to make a more permanent structure, obviously for safety reasons
Right.
and long term. It's going to be there for a long time.
Right.
So, what do you need from us?
We, as part of our lease, you guys just need to be informed. So that's kind of why we came forward before all of a sudden something comes up and you guys don't even have a clue. So this is just more of an informative. I don't know if you guys on your end need to make a motion or anything on it.
No,
It's
we
just,
don't.
No, we just asked to be informed of any buildings or
Or
any
structural
new
changes type.
construction,
Yep.
just so we're up to
It's
date.
just the basic reason is we have a different lease now, and the lease language includes any structural
Informative.
changes
Yep.
that they make. We have to be informed. That's all it is.
yep, this is just pretty much informative for you guys.
Very good.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Good luck with
squeezing
the
us in.
building.
Thank you.
Thank you. Approve claims, human services, and license center disbursements.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Adopt resolution, sign agreement for federal equipment grant.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution and sign, have the equipment grant signed.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Adopt resolution, sign agreement for Gopherland Trails.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution and sign the agreement for Gopher Head Trails.
Second.
This is the snowmobile trail
Right.
thing that we looked at. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Oh, approved, passed, whatever. Adopt resolution approving gambling permit for Houston County Area Law Enforcement Association for gambling activities at Maycal Grove.
Make a motion to approve resolution.
I'll second it.
I'm just curious what the funds are, being raised for, or what,
I have no idea.
that's,
I don't think they have to tell us that.
I don't think it's said in there exactly what it went for. I don't know if,
You just need a
is that basically the,
approval from us
It's,
to be.
it's something we've done before, I know that. It's a routine thing.
yeah, I don't know if they specify where it goes, though.
okay.
I recall seeing in the paper where they were going to be awarding a scholarship from the area law enforcement. Is that, did I see that in there?
Oh, okay.
So I'm assuming they raised them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be what.
All right, good.
Okay. Let's see, did we have a
Yep,
second?
you had a second.
Okay. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, those opposed? No. Okay. Motion carried. Approve abatements.
I think we had 3 of them. Can we do them all as one
Yes.
motion? I'll make a motion to approve the abatements.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Those
Aye.
opposed? Motion carried. Proposal for a county administrator search. How was
Well,
it?
you know, I'm going to talk about this a little bit. I'm in favor of an administrator. I think we really need one. I think to move forward and be able to do any reorganization or be able to make decent changes within the county system, we're gonna have to have one. I think we can keep going with boards and stuff, but you'll never get real changes. I don't think it can be done with 5 part-time people, though. Somebody there on a day-to-day basis to oversee and see where and how the changes could be made. But I do believe that right now might not be the best time because of the financial things we still have out there. We have the negotiations with all the unions to finish. We don't know where we're gonna be by the time we're done with that. We have we're in arbitration with an employee. We're working on the auditor court case. And my biggest fear is that we're looking at highway shop money has been discussed as we have money. And, you know, the money that this highway shop has been designated for 249 and to build a highway shop. And I don't want to see us starting to take funding from there to pay for other things. We already said we're not going to go to any bonding for it to do a highway shop. We voted on that. So we don't know where we would have money. You know, we're not to that point that we can say we got extra money at the highway shop, as far as I'm concerned.
Carol, how much is set aside? Do you know offhand? I'm sorry, kind of caught you.
Yeah, I guess I would say the highway department probably has around, is it $5 to $6 million in their fund balance that's accumulated over the years with the flooding incidents and, you know, getting money from the state for that. I don't know their exact breakdown. I know 249, they were looking at $3 million, like so many years from now, but it sounds like that's going to need to be done sooner. And aside from that, I really, if there were any projects that weren't carried over with that funding,
From my understanding, it's mainly, it's 249 is what they've taken that roughly, say, $6 million, give or take a point, and between a highway shop. But at one time, half of that was damn near projected for 249.
well, and it was the, you know, the wheelage tax that they were setting aside each year, which, you know, would have come up with been a majority of the cost of 249, but that was, like I said, out in the future, but now the shape that 249 is in, it's going to need to be done sooner, from what I understand.
So let me talk about a few things. Scott, you mentioned the ongoing negotiations, arbitration, attorney court case. All of those things will be decided before we get anybody in place. But I think those three things are the key reasons why we need to have an administrator in place. So if they aren't decided, by the time you have an administrator in place, that would be good to have an administrator help finish those issues. So I guess I have a hard time seeing why any of those really have anything to do with getting an administrator.
They don't, they don't so much as long as you're willing to say we're not touching any of the highway funds, but if we have to start sucking off, because we went with a 0.5%,
Minus.
minus 0.5, and if our budget isn't keeping up, then it's gonna come from someplace, and I
Where
would,
would it come from?
Well,
I don't wanna see it come from the highway.
And here's my thing. I guess I don't really know why the highway department even is really a big issue. I've brought it up several times when people say, where are you going to get the money? And I bring it up as an example that, the county's not poor. I mean, we're sitting on money in quite a few different areas that it should be. But I've always been one and have always brought it up that this position shouldn't be about where's the money going to come from. Because at the flip side, there's going to be a lot of efficiencies and gained savings on other ends of it. By the time we get anybody even in place is going to be approaching September. So it's only the last 3 months. We have plenty of money in the general fund before that, and we'll already be going through budget negotiations by that time in order to figure out what's coming on for the next year. So I don't think money should be a driving factor in this position at all, and I don't see the highway department funding this as much as I would see human services funding it or the sheriff's department funding it. The reason the highway department was even brought up was just an example that we've been sitting on $5 or $6 million for quite a few years on issues that if somebody says, boy, the county's poor, that we can't justify a $125,000 position, but yet we've got millions of dollars set aside for other projects that have been on the books for 10 years and haven't gone anywhere. So no, the highway department would not be touched for it. This would be monies all of its own. But like I said, we've got enough money in the general fund to cover for 3 months, and by then we'll have already budgeted for 2019. So that's where I say I think this is a critical position that, I think the board agrees it's a critical position that we need to get going on sooner than later versus postponing
Where would the
it.
money come from, Carol, if we put it in that we would not use the highway fund balance?
It would be out of the
General
General
fund.
fund?
general account, yeah. The general, we
Right.
have the general fund, we have the road and bridge fund, we have the human services fund. The general fund covers all those departments, not in the other one. And there is, fund balance there to, cover operations. We need to keep 50% of our current year levy to cover cash flow. So it would come from there.
I would say we need this done. I just won't do it unless we can say ahead of time that we will not touch the highway bridge funding for it.
Do you want me to make a motion not to use highway bridge?
Yep.
I move that we do not use the highway department money for an administrator.
Second.
Moved and seconded?
Hold on, let me rephrase.
Okay.
Let me rephrase. Will not use the highway department or any other specific department budget money.
Probably even better.
Because it's not just the highway department,
Right.
we have many other departments. So
Right.
we will not be using any other department's money or anything for this position.
Second.
Carol, is that a motion that from your standpoint as finance director is workable, doable, or do you have an objection to that?
It should probably be qualified that no other designated fund balances would be used.
Okay,
Not departmental.
okay.
We'll get it.
Eventually, Scott.
Yeah.
Because you said,
Yeah.
human services.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, instead of-
sheriff's office, but then you said no department.
Okay, so how would you like me to phrase this? I will
You phrase
rephrase the
it.
motion so that it fits what you're describing.
Not to use any highway department designated funds nor any other designated, previously designated funds.
Okay.
Fund balance.
Okay, so I will,
So moved.
yeah, I will rephrase the original motion to be that no, say it again, Carol?
Carol,
Use any-
do it.
I've got it here, not to use any highway department designated funds nor any other previously designated fund balance.
That's exactly what I said.
Second.
Okay. Is that exactly what you seconded also?
That's exactly, I'll second exactly what Justin said.
Okay. The only qualification that I would add on this is, logically to me, we probably, if we're going to do it, I think we're pretty much agreed that we need to, we probably should go ahead and get it done in such a way that we could have this person on board, ideally, if it works out, soon enough to be a part of the budgeting process for 2019.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you run into the same situation again next year and the year after, and you wind up without. And that's my fear, because if I think we need the position. I think that one of the reasons we need the position is to become more efficient. And I think I agree with what Scott said. As a 5-member board with the constraints of the open meeting law and the enforced then lack of communication between the 5 of us at times, we really need that every day, 5-day-a-week, on-the-job person to coordinate this place. And I really think that we need it sooner rather than later. So, end of my soapbox. Is there any further discussion on this particular motion?
Well, I would just comment, it's not necessarily affecting the motion or my feelings on, other than when we discuss the county highway funds and how much has been set aside, I want to be perfectly clear that I am not in favor of spending what we have set aside. I think it's prudent that we have some money set aside, but my goal is considerably lower than what is set aside. I have done a lot of review and questioning of people who have buildings that I think would be very adequate for our needs, and they have not approached $4 or $5 million. So.
Well, the only thing I'll say too is I think, like what Scott's talking about though, is not necessarily just the highway department building, but repaving 249, which I had heard anywhere between $5 and like $10 million. I mean, it was a lot that I don't think we'll be able to use all of that money in a highway building, or else we don't have any money for
Otherwise,
repaving
249
249.
and falls apart on us.
Right. So I agree. I don't think we're going to be able to use it all, and nor am I for using it all for the building, but it's kind of a twofold in that budget for 2 projects. That
And there is a lot more to just a building out there. I mean, there's a pond, there's salt sheds, sand sheds, cold storage. Yeah, I mean, a building is not, but no matter what, it's gonna cost some funds, and we need funds for 249. So there's not a huge pile sitting there, really, when you start looking at a big project like 249.
Okay. Are we ready to vote?
Sure.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Now, I will come back with a motion to approve Gary Wires for a search for county administrator, to begin the search process for county administrator.
Second.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second, and do we have more discussion?
I think it should just be laid out there for people, the public too. We had 2 proposals. one proposal, and I forget the company name that Gary Wires represents.
Springstead.
No, the other one that Gary represents.
Oh,
Do you have his card?
somewhere here. Oh, dear. There we go. DDA Human Resources Incorporated.
Yeah. So they had a proposal for, I think it was 17,000.
Yep.
The proposal was to search for well, actually, the proposal was to help the county come up with a job description, to advertise for the opening, and then to help sort through applications to find candidates for the position, and then helping the county narrow it down to just a few, make the decision. They had a 2-year guarantee that if anybody walked away from the position within 2 years, that they would cover the cost for free, other than, I believe it was just advertising or something like that. The second proposal was from Springstead's, who we've used for the county for other things before in the past. Their proposal was almost identical to the first proposal. Actually, do you guys really see many differences? I didn't see really many differences at all.
No.
And their proposal came back at 24,000 something.
Yeah.
So Gary Wires and his company were substantially lower. So that's why I am motioning to go towards them.
And they do all the background checks.
Oh, yeah, right.
And, they dive deep into these people for us to, look for anything, to get all the information so we can pick a decent candidate.
Is there any further discussion?
No, but I should add that with this proposal of 17,000 is coming out of the commissioner's professional and other technical fees. That, I guess, if we need to add that to the motion, that motion to approve this with that caveat, we can add that to it.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Consent agenda. Correspondence to payroll regarding recent hires.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Discussion items. Teresa.
I didn't have any meetings last week. Had a lot of discussion and phone calls about topics we've already covered. No meetings.
Just discussion with a few staff members out to the highway shop about getting going on staking out an estimated pond area. They're a little short-staffed right now. Everybody's pretty much on vacation. Brian's gone, Justin's gone, Pat's gone, but they're working on a layout for it so they can get a stake so we can have a meeting with landowners.
Good.
That's
That's it for me.
Board of Adjustment interviews we were supposed to have last week because of the weather. It was postponed until tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow at
8:30?
I think so.
I thought it was early.
No, it's 9:30, I think.
I'll look here quick.
Yeah. So, you want to sit on that, Fred, or no?
I can.
I had some discussion with Teresa, Scott, Jack, Fred, as far as one of the candidates, the applicants on there. I don't want to be seen as non-neutral in this issue. I had expressed concerns to Teresa. She kind of expressed the same concerns, or I'd asked Teresa if she'd sit on there. She expressed the same concerns of not being able to have a viewpoint of neutral. I guess I would feel more comfortable, Fred, if you were there, because I think you're more neutral to some of the contentious subjects in which one of the candidates has been a part of. Like I said, if for some reason you can't do it, I gladly will. But I just want to be known, too, that I may abstain from a final vote.
You're correct, too. 9:30 and 10:15.
Yeah.
There we go. I was just checking. Okay. And where?
Room 210.
Okay. On my calendar. All I have to do is tomorrow morning remember to look at my calendar.
There you go. So that is all that I have.
And
just a second. Justin, is there background information that I need to get from Tess?
Not that I know of. We were all
Okay.
given the initial applications.
Yeah, we got
That's
that.
all
I
that
just
I've
wondered
seen so
if there was
far.
anything else that's come
No.
since. Okay,
No,
thank
should
you.
be it.
I had no meetings last week because of the same cancellation Justin referred to.
Okay. We had a planning commission meeting last week, and we talked about two different things that were both approved. The one was a blacktop plant down on County 17 to service the County 27 resurfacing. And the other one was the approval of the old Camp Winnebago site for a new use that will be, I think, very beneficial to the community. I
They
think
do
that's,
quite a job down there.
it's going to be a lot of work for those people, but I think it'll be an excellent deal. You got in your, somewhere on the email, I got something from the court administrator or from the judge talking about any suggestions or any comments or any communication that we would have to them relative to the operation of that.
Yeah, either the court administrator or the judge.
Yeah. If you have anything, why, please communicate with them. Don't.
My only thought is the new position we hired to kind of be a in-between for, trying to think of what we termed it.
Like a social worker.
Social anthropologist or
Yeah.
social, can't remember what we
Kind
termed
of,
it.
yeah, to
Forensic
decide
social
whether.
Forensic,
Yeah, whether.
Forensic social worker,
Right.
there we go.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
I
okay.
was wondering how that position, and I'll email Judge Storino, find out how that, if that's helping with any of, I'm sure it's a little quick yet, but
Yeah, okay. Do you want to communicate with
I'll
them on that,
communicate
or
that.
should I as chair do it, or?
yeah, if you'd like to, that'd be great. If you might have some other ideas,
I've got it written
or
down.
if we got other ideas.
I will try to have a report on that, what the conversation was anyway, on May 8th at our meeting.
Great.
Okay. Did anybody else get this from the city? Did you get a wellhead extension plan? Or was that just I that got that?
I got something about
Okay.
drinking water, getting your drinking water tested and wells tested or whatever, but
Yeah, okay.
I think I received
I'll
anything
deal
from
with it.
City of Caledonia.
It's not anything that has to come here for approval. The city got an extension on something from the state because the well that they draw from is deep enough and there's enough stuff between the surface and the water source that they don't have to worry about surface water. So then some deadline was extended for them, is all that was. But I just wondered whether anybody else had gotten that. Okay, that's all I've got. Closing public comment.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Betsy Reedy from Money Creek. I want to change the subject. There's been a number of articles recently about how a vibrant art scene is connected with an growing important economy in the area. And I know that there are a number of arts groups in the county, but I'm only going to talk about one, and I'm going to make it brief, and that's the one kind of connected with the, not connected, but in the area of the city of Houston. It's called the Houston Arts Resource Council. And I'm not going to talk about everything they do, just two things. One started about 5 years ago. They worked with a young man who grew up in Houston and went away eventually and became a professional musician, a pianist. And I think the idea originated with him. He wanted to just get together with friends that he knew and play music together. And his friends were all over the country in various places, positions, doing various things. But he got them together and they play and then subsequently provide concerts for the public. These concerts are in the Cross of Christ Church in Houston, which has marvelous acoustics for that kind of music. And you can sit closer to the musicians than I am sitting to you, which is the way chamber music was written to be played, in a chamber, in a room, not in an arena, but in a smallish space. And this has been going on for years now. Concerts are free. Donations are welcome, but the concerts are free. And the musicians are put up and fed by local citizens. And they have kind of become our musicians. There's Joe and Garrett and Ruth and Roy, and they're our people. And there's a real kind of interesting bond that's developing between the people in the community and this group of young musicians. At a concert last year during the intermission, I was talking to people next to me, and they said they were both professional musicians who lived in Rochester. And they said, there is nothing like this in Rochester. There is nothing this good in Rochester. And these young people, these young musicians are talking to us, they're teaching us, and I think in some ways maybe there's a kind of community growing that's really exciting. They brought in 2 visiting musicians, artists last year. A violinist who was a concertmaster at a major European orchestra, and a woman who is a Russian pianist. And the 2 of them did a concert that just about took my head off. I just raised all the hairs on the back of my neck. It was amazing. And I was thinking of it in terms of, what that meant for the people who were there. And then afterwards I was talking to the musicians, and we do that after these concerts. We get together and talk with them. And they were talking about how important it was for them, how exciting it was for them to have the 2 of those people there working with them and teaching them in the days before the concert that they presented to us. So that's a very exciting thing that's happening that Hark was involved in. And then there's a new program that a woman who lives in the cities, and she has a cabin in the woods south of Highway 16, and she got some funding last year to start a kind of artist in residence program. So she brings in, people apply, she decides who they're going to get this residency, and they can spend a week in this cabin, and they have to kind of produce something. And she set up about 2 or 3 weeks ago a kind of meet and greet evaluation session where she brought people back and had to meet with people in the community and talk about what they had done. And for that, she put together this little pamphlet. And so I'm not going to say anything more about what she did. She's looking for more funding to expand the program this year, but that funding hasn't been set out yet, so we don't know whether it's going to go or not. But in the meantime, these are really nice little pamphlets, and I thought you just might be interested in seeing what's happening. So,
Thank you. You have no idea how close to my side of the street you're working. I have, unfortunately, I have had conflicts every time. It just bugs me, but I would really like to get to those performances and those
I wonder if
clinics.
that's something that
Yeah.
the EDA has on their list of stuff that happens in Houston County?
Well,
Honestly,
I thought of
don't
that
know.
too when you mentioned funding, if that might not be EDA eligible, so to speak, or.
yeah, I don't know where she's getting the funding.
I will talk with,
Okay.
I'm on that,
Yeah.
Fred and I are both
think
on the
that-
EDA committee, and we'll bring this up.
I think that if I understand correctly, the woman who's, Erin Dorman, who's gotten this thing going, is quite good on that subject, and, you know, she might be willing to come in and talk to you all. Because I know there are other arts groups in the county, and so it might be useful for everybody to know about.
And if there is something like that, we should have it on our EDA list of things to do,
Yes,
you know.
Yeah,
yes.
well, we have an EDA meeting coming
Yeah,
up next
and-
week,
yeah,
so
there's a new- been
we'll
working
talk
on the
about
new
it, see
website.
what's going on.
Okay.
So,
And sure,
Yeah.
they wouldn't give me 6.
Okay, I would have liked one to put on the file, but that's okay.
just out of curiosity, Fred, a related question, the choir that you a member of in Decorah, that I went to the concert, is that still going to go
Was
forward?
that right?
I had heard,
Oh, sure.
oh, okay, somebody said they were not getting new members or whatever, is it still vibrant?
We've had more new members in the last year than we've had for the half dozen years that I've been in there previously,
Good.
total.
'Cause-
I think we've got 15 or 20 new members.
Good, because I had
Yeah.
the same feeling listening to
And
that.
all of them much younger than I am.
I don't know.
Well, I had the
You know,
same
what
feeling
if
that
it's-
that's
I wonder if
his
his
president.
president sees Minneapolis, he said.
In what she
I think
listened
you have
to when I
another
listened to that.
public-
We've got,
Phoebe?
we have another public comment here that we've got to do.
Funny when you look at
We get carried away here a little bit, you know.
Wonderful.
Somebody gets us motivated. It's okay.
Start the clock.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'll be just a minute. Bruce Kimiko from Caledonia. I appreciated Mr. Locker's suggestion that perhaps some of these planning commission hearings get a little too lengthy when you double up. One of them went until 1 o'clock in the morning. 2 big hearings. I even faded and left before it was over with. So it would be nice to see, I think, the possibility of having more than one hearing meeting designated per month if we know it's going to be a big one. I think a lot of times people make decisions when they've been sitting way too long. I think there's been studies done on that. The only caveat I have with regard to $45 for a site visit is that I see that there will never be an open meeting again at a mine site. I've been to a couple of them, and I really appreciated to be able to do that because I'll never be able to see another mine site again unless I do a flyover. I'm not quite sure why this is being done, but it doesn't allow the public to at least see a mine site once. That would be my only concern. Thank you.
Bruce, real quick, just so I can answer your question. As far as open meetings at the sites, any other commissioners chime in here, but I don't believe this is going to change anything that's already done in the past. If there's a big enough issue, like we had a feedlot issue maybe a year or two ago, that was pretty big. We've had other issues too, where if it's big enough to warrant a big public meeting, I think it'll still be warranted. I don't think a per diem isn't necessarily the driving factor as to whether it's going to be open or not. It's just, do we compensate for the use of 2 hours of your time to drive there, sit around and talk and come back, fuel, that kind of stuff. So I'm not concerned about it. I don't think you should be concerned about it. As far as, I think it's going to be business as usual, how it's always been. It's just, should we be compensating them for having to go out to these sites? So I don't think it's going to drive whether it's public or not.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's for them to gather the information. So
And like I said, if it's a big enough issue, I'm sure it'll be public, but,
Just no pictures.
Wonderful.
That's to be with us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce. Well, I guess a motion for adjournment is in order.
So moved.
Second.
There's no discussion on that one. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned.
Hey,